Here at the very vast library of Grimwick, we thought it'd be a good idea to give a recap of the first book of Master Grimwick's time as a cat. Since there are so many conquests, it might be easier to get a refresher on the story than listen to all the chapters individually. If you haven't seen each chapter of Book 1, then shame on you. But we get it. Not really the trendsetter, are you? So if you were planning on watching them, best to stop this recording now and go do that. Or ignore my warning and be faced with you mortals call spoiler alerts. But please don't let this summary ruin your fun. If you liked what you saw, feel free to watch them anyways, or keep an eye out for nuggets you may have missed, or see if you can find any inconsistencies with our scribes. Some of you have already done a fine job of that. So with that warning, we move into Chapter 1. Chapter 1 started out with our first public record of Grimwick. His rise to power and immense interdimensional prestige. Like, so much power you wouldn't even believe, like, a lot. Anyway, it started in Hellforge, the most prolific demon realm. There were many popular events in Hellforge, but one that every demon observed was Branding Day, for that was the day which legions publicly drafted new recruits into their ranks. Of all the festivities, Brimstone University had made a spectacle of it. Brimstone was considered to be the realm's elite training ground for realm conquerors, and everyone wanted to tune in to see themselves what the next generation of leaders would look like. Joining a legion was all Grimwick ever wanted. Despite the factors being against him on achieving such a lofty goal, there was no convincing him otherwise, particularly on his own graduation day. For all his efforts not only got him accepted into Brimstone, but he managed to graduate the top of his class, and he was eager to have the spotlight as he addressed his peers and the world. Finally, it was his chance to show the realm how great he was. Of course, he'd take a humble approach and pay homage to his newly selected legion, but it would be a great opportunity to shove it all in those people's faces who spat down on him. However, things did not pan out for Grimwick. As the joining of names of selections went, Grimwick's name was never called. Despite his achievements, accolades, and top academic marks, not a legion selected him. Adding to his anguish, he still had to give the speech to the entire realm. And making it worse, he was the only one in his class who wasn't selected. Most demons would have apologized and tried again in a few centuries, but apologies are something that Grimwick was never keen on. So what does he do instead? Well, Grimwick might have told all the legions that they were stupid and they didn't know what they were doing, and that he said he'd start his own legion, to which the entire arena erupted into laughter. Starting a legion isn't something you just do. They take millennia to form, and often it's because a demon who was incredibly powerful decided to start his own. So you understand why it was so funny to hear a smaller or less proportionally sized demon with no pedigree or status or even popularity tried to start his own. Of all of Grimwick's attempts to stop the laughter, it only made them continue on more. So Grimwick decided to do something drastic to show his strength and get their attention. An ancient statue of the realm's founder, Brimstone, was nearby. It was said to be indestructible, but Grimwick put that rumor to the test, and he gave it his best effort to melt that hunk of metal. But it didn't melt. Not even the slightest. Or so it seemed. The arena was just about to laugh again when the head of the statue disconnected and clattered to the ground. And then the arena was silenced. Grimwick didn't wait for an apology and proceeded to light fires on everything he could, making sure that they would remember him. Chapter 2. The Librarian. Grimwick expected to be confronted, or congratulated, or fawned over for damaging what was supposed to be an indestructible statue, which would be another opportunity to show what he could do. Maybe one of the legions would have changed their minds. If he did, he would have feigned reluctance, but accepted anyway. But they didn't. No one came. It wasn't until after a few custodians passed did Grimwick learn that the statue he burned was just a replica. Heartbroken, he returned to his dorm room. But when he arrived, he was enraged by his room and all that adorned his achievements. He put so much effort into getting all of these to impress the legions. So when they all still passed on him, he felt nothing for all of his accolades. He just felt that they were a waste of time and effort. So, in typical Grimwick fashion, he set all of his possessions ablaze, which in hindsight wasn't the best move, for essentially he made himself homeless. He did forget about one possession that he kept in his pocket. His student medallion. After a short time after he destroyed his possessions, it vibrated in his pocket, and he watched as his status of student was revoked. And just when he was about to throw it away, it shook again, and then it changed his status to alumni. which gave him an idea. He could use the library's ancient portal rooms. It was a long shot, but he didn't have anything left to lose. So off to the library he went. He was stopped by the cheerful librarian, who wouldn't let him get into the portal room until he answered a riddle. Eventually he succeeded, but she still didn't let him just go off to the portal room. She wouldn't pass an opportunity to lecture him. The librarian talked some more about the importance of finding yourself and carving your destiny or something like that. She also reminded him of the dangers of jumping through a portal and the rules of Legion registration, and Grimwick at this point didn't care about any of it. He just wanted out of this realm to conquer his own. Then she made him a deal. If he were to go through a portal, she'd file his Legion's name and seal. Between you and I didn't think she expected of any of the ancient gates to open. They hadn't in centuries, and chances are they wouldn't now. Or she didn't expect that Grimwick had such determination that he was just going to sit in a dark room all by himself waiting for the day that one did. So with their agreement, she handed him the key and let him read any of the books he wanted in the library while he waited. And wait, he did. He waited, and waited, and waited. He read almost everything in the library, even the romances. Eventually, a portal did open, a tiny one at that, but all the same, Grimwick jumped through. Chapter 3. The Cake, the Wolf, and the Cat. In Chapter 3, we take a step back to get an introduction to the summoner who created the tiny portal, which was none other than the apathetic student mage named Norbert Soot, a first-year student at Cragstone Mage Academy in the realm of Yorn. We also learn that he, too, is a bit of an outcast, larger than his peers, clumsy, and the worst in his class. All these attributes have earned him many nicknames across the student body and faculty. Some of my favorites are Pastry Boy, Pinata Pig, and Stupid Soot. Anywho, it was a weekend night, and in the dining hall was a buzz of students and teachers planning their weekends. Norbert's idea was to have a party with the stray cats in the nearby woods. The most popular first-year Arthur Bogg noticed that Norbert was stashing away pieces of chicken in his robe, and he called Norbert out on it. Arthur made a big scene in front of the entire cafeteria, and they were just tickled that since Norbert hadn't been invited to any of the other parties, he decided to make his own. Arthur went so far as to smash 2 pieces of cake onto Norbert's head. It seemed the entire cafeteria thought making fun of Norbert was a funny and great way to start the weekend. Well, except for Professor Vine. She had no tolerance for laughter or fun. By the time she glided over, the rest of the tables had dispersed, and she did little to comfort the cake and tear-faced Norbert. She just told him to take a shower, of which Norbert did not. With cake in his hair and chicken in his pocket, he went out into the woods. When he got to the overlook where the stray cats normally hung out, there was a scuffle of activity and cats were scurrying in all directions. When Norbert cleared the tree line, he saw a scrawny wolf with a tiny cat in its jaws. Norbert threw chicken wings at the beast. Eventually, Norbert was able to make a spark of light that scared the beast away. Norbert ran around the school looking for help. He looked everywhere. The teacher's room, the main hall, the infirmary, and no one was around. He wanted to save this cat, and he couldn't find a way to. And then he went to the library to see if he could heal the cat himself. He found the most viable-looking book, which was covered in skulls, crossbones, and not so other cheery items. Still, Norbert thought this was the best option, and took it to the nearest spell room. He tried his best to read the spell book over and over again. It wasn't until when the cat stopped breathing that it sent him into a fury of motions, reading the spells again and again, just giving it all that he could. Then, a golden flame washed over the cat, and then spread to the entire room, catching everything on fire, including Norbert's robes. He ran out and closed the spell room door. When the flames died out, he opened it expecting to find the ashes of a cat that he tried to save. Instead, in the same spot, he found a teal-colored cat with very strange eyes. Chapter 4. The Perfect Pair. Grimwick and Norbert start off with a bit of a misunderstanding. Grimwick believes that Norbert is a magical giant, and dreams of enslaving the granddaddy of them all realms, giants who can do magic. Norbert thinks that he's patched up a dying cat, and is very shocked when he finds that it starts to speak and stand on its hind legs. When the confusion is finally straightened out, that Grimwick is in fact just in a normal magical realm, and that he's in the body of a cat, Lord Grimwick becomes very angry about that, which is only further exasperated when he figures out how weak of a summoner Norbert is, and that his new body can't even make a good proper fireball. Norbert has continued to be alarmed that he summoned a demon into his realm. That wasn't part of his plan at all. With Norbert in shock and Grimwick on one of his angry streaks, Grimwick tries to scratch Norbert, but the fumbling mage accidentally puts a spell that prevents Grimwick from harming him. And as Grimwick tries to leave the boy, he finds out that their magical tether is too weak and keeps getting teleported back to him. The two begin to bicker, and of course, who would show up but Professor Vine? And she is not pleased. Though the magical rules were more flexible at the academy, she didn't want a demon skulking around the school, so she tried to eliminate Grimwick. She started off by trying to crush him with the force of gravity, but Norbert intervenes. She threatens to blow Grimwick away, but Norbert stands in the way. Finally, she snatches Grimwick by the neck and is ready to ignite him in her hands, but Norbert makes a moving case of why Grimwick should have a chance to live. We still aren't sure why Vine agreed. Temporarily, at least. Our scholars think it's because she's claimed to have killed archdemons, dragons, and other monsters. A demon trapped in the body of a cat would be no problem for her. Other scholars say that it was because she pitied Norbert, and thought that Norbert could use a friend. But I don't think Vine pities anyone. I think it's because she likes to play with her food. Her stone-cold facade was broken with a smirk at the possibility of ripping Grimwick apart. I'd imagine she liked having the chance to torment them both before delivering vengeance that she was storing for them. But for the time being, she agreed, but not without some punishments of her own. Norbert was to serve detention every night of the semester, weekends included. She claimed her first task would be rather simple. For every night the first task went uncompleted, she'd issue a 0 for that day's assignments for Norbert. And if Norbert got a failing grade across all of his classes, he'd be expelled. If that were to happen, he wouldn't be a student anymore, and therefore she could inflict whatever punishment she wished upon Norbert and Grimwick. She left the two alone with that thought. Chapter 5. The Pact. Later, Grimwick was taken to Norbert's pigsty of a room, which Grimwick insisted they clean and organize. Then it's off to their first night of detention, where they learn they have to gather rare mooncap mushrooms for Vine. She, of course, had a clause that made it a little bit more challenging. This assignment would only be over when they gathered the allotted number. Failure to gather enough in a single night would add to their total tally. Vine said the biggest challenge would be the pigs of the woods. They love the mushrooms and can be quite defensive over their treats, so she gave Norbert a blade to which he could use to defend himself since his magic was so weak. But once they were out in the woods, the only conflict was between Norbert and Grimwick. Norbert was trying to relate to Grimwick that they both weren't well liked and not too popular. The comparison to the weakling only infuriated Grimwick. To see if he could spark Norbert into some sort of action, Grimwick hit on the fact that Norbert's parents were dead and he needled him about it. But that backfired on Grimwick. Norbert did something that Grimwick wasn't even expecting. He took out the blade that Professor Vine had given him and threatened to break the seal that tethered them together. Normally a summon is fueled by the strength of their summoner, but Norbert was so weak that a mere prick of the seal sent Grimwick to the ground. Just like that, the tables had turned, and Norbert had all the power in this argument. If their connection broke, Norbert would have a burn and a cut mark, but Grimwick could be sent back to Hellforge, and his dream of conquering a realm would have lasted less than 1 day. So they came to an agreement. Most summoners wanted money, power, or something useful. Norbert just wanted help finishing the semester. In exchange, Norbert would transfer his seal to another person of Grimwick's choosing. Being that they still had most of the semester left, Grimwick had plenty of time to find a replacement. So they shook hands, paused, and cemented their pact. Chapter 6. Overlooked. So the nights went on, and Grimwick and Norbert hadn't found a single mushroom. The late nights were taking a toll on both. They slept through most of their classes, and Vine continued to grade Norbert at 0 for his assignments, causing his dismal academic marks to slip even further. So while Norbert struggled in school, Grimwick put his effort into finding clues about these mushrooms. He got a big clue after checking out a book on mushrooms from the library. He discovered for as serious and straight-laced as Vine was, she was quite the trickster. The mooncap mushrooms could only be found on nights where there was a full moon, and when Grimwick confronted Vine about it, she defended it by saying that it was a possible task, and one that could be completed by the end of the semester. Grimwick had some more words to say, but Vine pointed out to them that this evening there was a full moon. So Norbert and Grimwick ran out into the woods, and they were delighted and surprised when they started to find the mushrooms. And they didn't just find their allotted amount, which totaled 27 by this point. They found dozens more. The two were almost giddy. When they settled they had enough, they decided to take the long way back to the school, for they feared if they came back too early, Vine would be suspicious. So Norbert decided to take Grimwick on his favorite view of the woods. As they climbed, Norbert was growing happier, eager to show the spot of which the two had met, or the body of the cat that he'd met. But something was nagging at Grimwick. Vine said the pigs loved these stupid mushrooms, but they hadn't seen any pigs all night. And Vine might withhold the truth, but she didn't seem to lie. So where were the pigs? When they got to the overlook, Norbert was distracted by the view, but Grimwick was distracted by the ground and the apparent scuffle and specks of blood scattered about, like something large was lurking here. And just when Grimwick decided to go back to the safety of the school, a wolf exploded from the brush. A large wolf, one with abnormal muscles on it, like it had been enhanced by some form, like the wolf's body hadn't caught up with the sudden addition of muscle. Grimwick decided that he'd try to distract it while Norbert escaped. It wasn't that Grimwick was trying to be selfless. If Norbert died, he disappeared. That couldn't happen. Grimwick distracted the creature, but Norbert was too scared to move. Then the creature tried easier prey, Norbert. If it wasn't for the boy's beefy hands, he'd be dead for sure. Norbert yelled and yelled for help to get the creature off him, but Grimwick was too far away. They used their distance and their short tether to his advantage. He portaled on top of the creature. Grimwick scratched and tugged and prodded the beast off of Norbert. And thinking of the only way to stop the beast, he pulled upon the creature's ear so it lost balance, and the wolf toppled over the edge of the overlook, taking Grimwick along with it. Grimwick was banking on the short tether to save him from the jagged rocks below, but Norbert leaned over the edge and was crying, essentially extending their invisible tether closer to the bottom of the rocks. But luckily Norbert was still weak, and just when Grimwick was at the bottom, he was portaled back up to the top. The two walked back in silence, hoping that they had enough mushrooms. Norbert was in too much shock to speak, but Grimwick couldn't stop thinking that the wolf seemed unnatural, like someone was controlling it, or at the very least didn't care who it hurt. And there you have it, Book 1 all tallied up. The second volume is called The Crypt, and even though Norbert and Grimwick found the mushrooms, Vine still has many more ideas of punishment left. She claims she assigned them to the school script because it's safer, but I doubt that very much, because there's a monster that is lurking in those dark, unlit corridors.